Alright everyone, it's time to do some more grinding with Keats, and I've got my special guest back to tell us about the folks we're grinding.
Ah, lovely, lovely folks. We've got quite a few in Chapter 5, and, most of them are actually real.
Oh, that's good.
Well, real in folkloric terms. So let's start with one of the easier ones, the Boggart. Now, I seem to recall that we talked about brownies and the like last time.
Yep.
And Boggarts are basically brownies that people have mistreated in some fashion. And they go bad. So, you know, you're not leaving your milk out for the brownie, or you beat your brownie and it becomes a boggart, which then proceeds to act a bit like a poltergeist, or in Wales it could become a booker, which lives in marshes and basically drowns people.
Seems like we get a lot of folks that do that.
Yeah, that's common folklore, though. A lot of these myths and legends were to lead people, well, to basically warn people away from doing stupid and dangerous stuff.
Yeah, I'd always think the danger would be inherent enough, but I guess not.
No, it's like, I don't know, what was it? If you suck your thumb, some monster will cut off your thumb. That sort of thing. Social control.
Well, that's just cruel.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that from my parents, so...
Right, but I take it that boggarts don't usually hide in cupboards or anything and turn into what you fear most.
Hiding in cupboards? Possibly, because they're basically brownies that have gone bad, they're household spirits. But turning into things, that's a little less clear.
Okay, so Harry Potter has lied to us yet again.
Fantasy, people always take liberties with myth. Speaking of liberties, Goblin Eye. Which, despite how it sounds, is not actually Welsh. It's a Germanic earth spirit, very similar to knockers and kobolds. Much like knockers and kobolds, they're very short, about 1.5 foot tall, incredibly ugly, and wear mining outfits. Unlike knockers and kobolds, who are generally sort of helpful, Goblin Eye tend to cause rock slides in quarries and mines because they never stop working.
Yeah, the datasheet in this game says that they're good luck and help you turn up gems.
Well, if you follow them and they're working particularly good seem, no doubt. But yeah, they're not that like many Earth spirits, they're not very friendly. So, what do we got here? That looks like... Oh, Mandragora! That's good timing, actually. Because, Mandragora, there are actually two kinds of Mandragora. Mandragora as a general term for the homunculi or artificial people created by sorcerers. Or Mandragora, the alternate name for mandrake root.
Yeah, remember we talked about that in Chapter 3, as the Alrane was another name for that.
Yes. Yes, and of course, I believe there was a lot of cruelty to dogs in the description of that.
Yep. And also cruelty to poor Yarthkins. I am still not using him properly, but I will by the end of the video, I promise.
Well, Yarthkins, apart from, well, it could be argued that it could be spelled that way, but most sources actually take away the T and H, or make them silent. Little is actually known about them, folklorically. All we know is that they're from a group of fairies called, collectively, the Tiddy folk. and that they demanded offerings to keep the earth fertile. We neither know nor wish to know, considering many myths, how this was done. But Fomorior, on the other hand, we know a fair bit about, because they feature quite prominently in Irish myth. Fomorior, or Fomorians, are very similar to the Christian Nephilim, in that they're monstrous beings. There's no unified description of them beyond the fact that they're big, they're mean, they're pissed off, and they're monstrous. And they waged a war of hatred until they were beaten up by the Tuatha Dé Danann, which I've probably mispronounced. I'm so sorry, my Irish readers. Viewers.
Yeah, it's alright. I think Rover covered that also in the first chapter. We were talking about the Tuatha Dé Danann, as he pronounced it.
Yeah, that's the one. Now, originally they weren't individualized, but later you had people like Baelor of the Evil Eye. And his eye was pretty nasty, because it actually burned people from a long way away.
I think we may be fighting him very soon.
Ooh, cool.
Although he's spelled Baral in this, but that's probably a Japanese to English translation thing.
Very possibly, yeah. But it would be nice to see a representation, because the last one I saw of it was in Sloin by 2000 AD, which was pretty cool. So, next up we've got the Vachan. They're Scottish. They were one-footed, one-eyed, and one-armed.
Alright, so their depiction in here is pretty much double that.
Yeah. On top of that, their one arm, on the end of it, they had a flail, whose tips were iron apples. Don't ask me how that works, I don't know. But apparently they were believed to be derived from the position Scottish druids would stand in when casting curses. And they're related to the Athark, about which next to nothing is known apart from the fact that, well, they like to throw things off, throw people into ravines. So, yeah. Then, of course, you got the Wryneck, which is a bird. That's literally all I could find on it. It's a bird, and it's quite pretty. But its only other distinguishing feature that I'm aware of is that it can turn its head in 180 degrees like owls. Yeah. To be fair, owls creep me out when they do that.
I kind of think that's the point. They're predators. They're trying to scare away any other predators that might get in their way.
Yeah, they're also an incredibly bad omen in Welsh myth. Mainly due to their creation we discussed last time. Yeah. And now, remind me which one that one is. Lightning.
Which lightning one?
It was dragon-like.
Oh, Kraken? That was from Chapter 3.
Oh, right. Well, dragon-like, that's fine. Bathia, then. Because, Bathia, all we know is that it has multiple translations, which vary from lightning all the way to reptile, beast, and bear. It's most likely a subspecies of dragon, and very fond of rapids and caves, and there is apparently a mountain called Benvair named after it. Of course, it could be the inspiration behind the Behir, of D&D and mythical fame, which was a lightning-shooting lizard. So, once again, we've got basically a lightning-shooting dragon.
Alright, and of course, in this game, they've got multiple variations of it.
Yeah. Now, Balbolk, that was an interesting one. At first, I was really confused, because, even though it sounds properly Irish, there's nothing really that I could find that was useful in Gaelic with that phrasing. However, I did find it was a corruption of Bechola, who was a queen of Tara, which was the original seat of the High Kings of Ireland. And she was seduced by Flann MacJima, who is either a hero or a king of the fairies. It's a bit confused there. There's two of them, they might have been the same person. Either way, we've got the usual stuff. He was very pretty, she was seduced away to another land. They spent a night making sweet love, and she came back and no time had passed, because fairyland. Unfortunately, that's pretty much where the myth ends. She was seduced. Not a very interesting one, unfortunately. Bowelwind... nothing. It sounds a bit like Balewind, which could be used as a generic supernatural term, but we got nothing there.
I figure they're probably just kinda element-related.
Yeah.
Similar names.
Yeah, it's very similar with Ulta. And then, of course, you've got... Now, there was an alternate translation for that, wasn't it? Euregic. I didn't find anything on that. And same with Ulbir. I didn't find anything with Ulbir. I did, however, find it with the alternate translation, Urisk, which gets repeated as a name for one of Keats' folk, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, that would actually be, a sort of, household spirit, like a brownie. Urisks, were apparently, though, only occasionally hard workers on farms when they were bribed. Most of the time, they were stupid and lazy, and they were well known for, frightening women by leering at them. So, yeah, Urisk. Leered at women, it was apparently horrifically ugly, so I don't know why they write down that it only really scared women. Also, I don't know why so many of these earth spirits are meant to be so ugly. Very confusing.
Well, association with dirt, filth, seems kind of natural linguistically.
Yeah, I suppose, but there's also, you know, the growth aspect of things. Kalmia is a flower. Actually, it's a whole genus of flowers. I found nothing beyond that. Bauginus and JamieTheD, again, they sound right, but there's nothing that I can find. So, yeah, we then come on to some of the more interesting stuff. For example, Durandal. Durandal was the sword of Charlemagne. And, like many mythical swords, there's no real agreement even on how it was created. So most agree that it was made by a famous maker of romantic weapons called Wayland the Smith, who was a legendary master blacksmith. He had two brothers. He was Norse, and he was a pretty badass guy. But according to the Song of Roland, it was brought by an angel to Charlemagne, who then gives it to his paladin Roland. And then, according to another source, the Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto, claims it was once possession of Hector of Troy, which is kind of iffy, considering that swords of that time were made of bronze. And Durandal was meant to be incredibly sharp and incredibly tough. It was used to hold off 100,000 strong Muslim army. One man, 100,000 Muslims, one sword.
It's definitely impressive.
Yeah, tell me about it. Now, in the Song of Roland, Roland being the wielder of Durandal, they claim that the sword is said to contain, within its golden hilt, one of the teeth of St. Peter, the blood of St. Basil, the hair of St. Denis, and a piece of clothing from the Blessed Virgin Mary. I think they were overdoing it on the relic front. I mean, I know sometimes you want a holy sword, but that was slightly overdoing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of overkill in the holy department.
In the end, Roland was defeated, and he attempted to destroy the sword to stop it getting, being recovered by the Saracens. Yeah, he apparently created a chasm called La Brèche de Roland in the Pyrenees, trying to destroy the sword, which, as it turned out, was indestructible. So he hid the sword beneath his body, along with Oliphant, the horn of Charlemagne. The horn used to warn Charlemagne's army. You can't make this stuff up.
Well, I think a lot of people would say someone must have.
Now, local folklore claims that Durandal still exists, preserved in a little place in France called Rocamadour, embedded in a cliff wall. Obviously, the local tourist office calls it a replica, and if it were a real indestructible sword, we would have known about it by now. Still, it's a nice, fun myth. I would actually recommend the Song of Roland. It's pretty cool. So, yeah. Swords are actually a bit of a theme, because we have Mraltach and Bigaltach, which in folklore are two sides of the same creature, if I recall.
Yep.
But in myth, they are the two swords of a very unlucky guy. Well, some would say he's lucky, some would say he's very unlucky. Jarmed Odina. Jarmed of the Love Spot. Now, he was called that because he had a magical beauty mark on his face that caused pretty much any women to, well, go wild over him. Of course, this led to a lot of problems, especially since he was also cursed by... where was it? Angus's steward. Yeah, he killed the son of this steward, and the steward cursed him to be killed by the steward's transformed son, who was turned into a boar at some point to save his life. Myth. It gets quite fun at times. But yeah, he caused a lot of trouble, unfortunately, with his love spot and his curse. And you can see an interpretation of that in another JRPG, funnily enough. Fate Zero. Where he's one of the people you can summon. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, who he managed to piss off. This is kind of important. Now, thinking back, Nidoking, who is the one Irish hero who you'd really not want to piss off that you've heard of?
I probably wouldn't want to piss any of them off, but, Cuchulainn comes to mind.
You're close. Finn McCool.
Okay.
Yeah, he, seduced the wife of Finn McCool. That didn't end well for obvious reasons. But his two swords, were, Moraltach, the Great and Fierce one, which was given to him by Manannán mac Lir, the god of the sea, who seemed to have quite an armory to give away. And Eongus gave Diarmid Bigaltach, the Little Fury. Other weapons that Diarmid had included Gebid, the Yellow Spear, and Gedirg, the Red Spear, which caused wounds that cannot be healed.
Right, and those became Gaboy and Gadiarg in this game, I think.
Yes.
Alright, so it's all coming together.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a lot of good Irish myth being represented here. Mostly from the Fenian cycle, it must be said. Which is the same where Finn McCool, Diarmid, and Cuchulainn are contemporaries. If I'm remembering it right. Right, who else have we got? We have, Yama. Lord Yama. Who is, the Indian god of death, essentially. Now, his name can be translated to mean twin. He's from early Vedic mythology, and he's the son of the sun god Surya, overlord of the court of Hell, because Hell, of course, has to have a court to judge the souls. He is also said to be the first mortal human being who died. However, even though he's a big part of Hindu myth, he is actually subordinate to Shiva and Vishnu. Because Shiva and Vishnu are part of the Brahmin, which are a higher tier of deity, if you will.
Alright. Yeah, there's certainly ones that I've heard a lot more about.
Yeah. He is the Guardian of the South, there are 3 hymns in the 10th book of the Rig Veda that are addressed to him, and he has 2 hellhounds, basically 4 eyes, wide nostrils, guarding the road to his home. Yeah, most of the stories involving Yama involve Shiva or Vishnu intervening on behalf of somebody and essentially kicking the crap out of Yama, poor guy. In most of the art, he has blue skin, he's wearing red clothes, and he's riding a water buffalo. He has a noose of rope in his left hand, and he he literally pulls the soul from the corpse with this rope. So he's kind of an Indian death cowboy. He judges people in Naraka, which is sort of hell, but if we would think of things in Christian terms, it's more like a sort of purgatory, where instead of being punished forevermore, the soul is purified of sin and then either sent to heaven or back to earth.
Alright, so, kind of a Sheol-ish place.
Yes, very much like Sheol-ish. Sheol. Now, interestingly, in Vedic texts, good deeds and bad deeds don't cancel each other out. So, you might be spending some time in heaven for your good deeds, and then spending time in hell to purify yourself. Before you go back to Earth, and it's... I actually like it. It's, I like the idea of hell as a purifier as opposed to eternal punishment, because, it's maybe the idea of being punished forever for, I don't know, being lazy. Because sloth is, of course, one of the 7 venal sins.
Well, the way I always took it, at least the Christian formulation, was that it was belief in Christ and his sacrifice that was the key to not ending up in hell. And as long as you did that, whatever your sins were, they'd be purged before you were allowed into heaven. I guess that's more Dante.
Yeah. Then again, I mean, you know, all myth cycles are weird, and, you know, the mythical elements of Christianity are no exception. But there we go. Right, moving on, we have Grindilo or Grundilo. Again, not much known about them. We know they are a sort of Yorkshire-Lancashire bog creature, and having lived in Bradford, which is quite close to the Yorkshire moors, I can tell you we have no shortage of moor and bogland. Yeah, the name is thought to be connected to Grendel in, you know, etymologically. But it's also found in many Old English charters where it's in connection with meres, bogs, lakes. So it's blatantly some kind of bog creature. And as is very common with bog creatures, it's not a nice thing, and it's used as a cautionary tale. Grundilos, they have long, sinewy arms, and they grab children and drown them if they come too close to the water's edge.
Alright, so that's one where Harry Potter got it right.
Yeah.
And this part, just imagine me doing this room exactly the same way 5 times in a row.
Oh dear.
It's not all that bad, but you only ever see 2 bugaboos as Keats, and here they are.
I mean, I've seen you do worse grinding.
Yeah,
Much
I cut
worse.
out a lot of repetition for this one just to get it down to under 40 minutes.
Yeah. Right, and speaking of etymology, let's have a little discussion of, Alhazred. Ah, yes. Now, the description reads, evil book, which, is the best evil book of its kind, and the instant connection you make when you think evil book and Alhazred would, of course, be Abdul Alhazred, the creator of, the fictional Necronomicon from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos.
And also the bad guy in King's Quest VI.
Yes! Obviously there's a lot of fictional cross-pollination there, because everyone and their mum, has been using Lovecraft in some fashion or other at some point. But yes, it was originally, created by Lovecraft when he was little. He created it as a pseudonym after reading 1001 Arabian Nights.
It does sound like a name that would be Arabic in origin.
Abdul is a common Arabic name component. The name is weird because while it has elements that are definitely Arabic, I mean the whole thing is Arabic, but it's not a proper Arabic construction. It's basically like me using the name, I don't know, Jabri Portable. The words are there, but it makes no sense etymologically.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a name, but that's because I know what portable means.
Yeah. So, for example, Abdul is never a name by itself. It's a component of a name, and it generally means of. And Al is, again, of. So he's used of twice. Now, this has generally been translated as either Hazra or Hazrid, Ha being a separate word connected to the of, meaning he fenced in or he prohibited, or it could come from the Arabic Hazrat, meaning great lord. And Abdul is a common Arabic prefix meaning servant of. So, the general idea that Lovecraft was going for was servant of the prohibited or servant of the great lord.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. Not really surprising considering he was one of the most famous Lovecraftian Cthulhu cultists. So, yeah. That's Alhazred. Lovecraft mythos, I mean, people have written entire books on Lovecraft mythos.
Including Lovecraft.
Well, yeah, I'm talking academic stuff. People have done theses on the whole phenomenon.
I'm trying to remember whether there was a Lovecraft course at my college.
I'm pretty sure there's one in the universities at Boston, Mass, for obvious reasons.
There's Langalan at its full power. It's huge.
Yeah, Langalan, it sounds like it should be something, but I wasn't able to find anything. And that's really frustrating me, because it sounds... It's definitely Gaelic.
So viewers, if you've got any ideas, write in, let us know.
Yeah, and I will also be having a really hard look after this video to try and work it out. For campus, we have no idea. The visuals, it looks like one of those generic floating seed creatures. So there's no clues there. It doesn't appear to be any kind of corruption I can work out. So, that, again, is probably one of the made-up ones. But finally we have the kiosk. Not kiosk, as it's spelt in Folklore. That one's Scottish. And that's a mermaid, basically. Top half of a woman, bottom half of a salmon. Because, of course, it's very often the most common food fish of the area for some bizarre reason. And, yeah, it follows the usual prototype for, mermaids. The nicer kind of mermaids, as opposed to sirens, which are harpies, which are horrible. Yeah, they grant you 3 wishes when they're captured. They're curious about humans. Occasionally they fall in love. But it's always terribly tragic because they can never stay away from the sea for long. And not just due to the fish legs.
And finally, we've got a present that spits other presents, and is a slash element attack.
And it's beautiful. It's not mythical, but it's beautiful.
Yep, I'll certainly try to use it as much as I can when it comes to slash element.
So, yeah, that's our folklore. And we're at the end.
And it came in just about the right amount of time.
Yep.
So thanks for joining me again, and I'll hope to see you in the final grinding video.
Definitely. See you around.